Hello and welcome to this edition of the Halcyon Show. My name's Will Risley and I'm going to be your host for this episode. Welcome. Sit down, take a load off. How's your day been? Has it been good? I hope it's been better than mine. A couple of things have happened to me today that have made me seriously question whether or not I can be trusted to manage my own finances for longer than a day before I start spending it all on candy and kittens and whatnot. Nevertheless, we arrive at another podcast. I'm going to do things a little differently on this occasion because I'm going to try and do something that I never do, which is talk about things in moderation. I'm going to attempt to do this podcast in a different way than I usually have, and I'm going to break it up into 4 individual segments. I'm going to record it in one big chunk here, and then release the video, but then I'm also going to release it in 4 separate chunks. So if you tune into old Leonides Boy for any particular reason, i.e. gaming talk, talking about sports, talking about what's going on social media, or indeed what's going on with me on YouTube and other channels, then good news for you. You're going to be able to digest it in several delectable, meaty, / chocolatey, whatever your preference is, chunks. So we're going to kick things off with gaming, because it's the thing that seems to be the thing that's driving me most at the moment. It's what I appear to be spending most of my time doing. So I want to touch on something that I talked about in my most recent podcast, which I released not too long ago, which was brought to my attention by my cohort. I believe he refers to me as on his channel, Defunct Games, or Defunct Gaming. I leave that in there because I'm so paranoid about calling him Defunct Gaming these days that I often double check myself to make sure I'm not calling him that, because, well, my mind works in weird ways, and for some reason I thought Defunct Gaming rolled off the tongue better than that back in the day, despite the fact that it wasn't the name. I can't just go around making things up and renaming things that are easier to me. But coming back onto the topic, the easy mode debate. For those of you not versed in this, for those of you, the non-gamers among us, games traditionally are set up to be played on a certain difficulty level from the outset. The developers will often piece together the game to make sure that the narrative, the mechanics, and the graphics and everything holds up in a certain way and playstyle. But then they'll go about diversifying it to enable people to seek more of a challenge, to enable people with different playstyles to maybe get involved, and indeed, if your ability level, or if you're not a hardcore gamer but you like the look of a particular game, lower it so that you have an easier point of access. However, this seems to have sparked a particularly rigorous debate with people, because there are purists, and a conversation I had with different games, the term gatekeeper was uttered a lot, not necessarily within this context, but it's a term that I like, so I'm going to keep it and use it here. Gatekeepers who have decided for whatever reason that gaming belongs to the hardcore, to the people that are willing to put in the effort, time and hours to try and enhance the overall quality of the fan base. What I mean by that is that unless you're able to play the game on the hardest difficulties, then you shouldn't be playing the game, period. And then you've got people on the other side who are attempting to imbue this debate with the notion that, and this is something that, again, Cyril was accused of doing, that you are anti against people. So anti-against? This is so hard because it's so hard to label people. We live in a time when labeling is the easiest thing. But we have to include easy modes in order to be inclusive, and if you're not inclusive, you're against disabled people. Now, I wanted to relate this to my own experience, because I talked about this a little bit yesterday, and I think I've made my point quite clear, which is that I think that it's down to the developer. If a developer wants to make an easy game, they can make an easy game. If they want to make a hard game, they can make a hard game. If they want to make a hard game and put an easy mode in, that's kind of their choice. If you want to talk about accessibility, though, and developers want to add stuff in to make it easier for people from different dispositions, again, I keep referencing here, he might as well be sat here talking to me, he might as well be talking for me, I might as well be sitting here with a pina colada and just watching him school everybody. But the example he gave was people with photosensitive epilepsy, that game designers have intentionally placed things in their games to make sure that it doesn't trigger an episode. And that's great. It means that people who would otherwise not be able to play the game can play the game. Isn't that great? So now let's talk about my experience with gaming. I appreciate an easy mode because I'm not a talented gamer. I like being able to play certain games on the lowest difficulty because it means I get to at least experience it. Now, do I get to experience everything the game has to offer? Probably not. Because when you up the difficulty, it does have the unintended effect of making you think about what you're doing more. And while the enjoyment level it certainly wanes a little bit, but the level of pride you feel in playing the game because you're able to achieve something that you thought you might not be able to achieve certainly increases. So that may offset the enjoyment a little bit. But here's a point that no one seems to have considered. Actually, two. Well, the first one I'll just touch on because it was a great point. It's not mine. So let's just get it out of the way. Is cheats. Back in the day, if you were playing a game and it was proving to be a cantankerous little asshole, you could just put a cheat code in. God mode, unlimited ammo, unlimited stamina, money, whatever. My game of choice for this was GTA. When I would have been old enough to play this, I would have been probably 11, 10 or 11, maybe 12, 13. So probably too young to play the game anyway, but let's put the content to one side for a second. Just the mechanics of the game, I found it, Vice City in particular, I found it clunky, found it unresponsive, found it difficult to master, because it requires maybe more patience than I was willing to offer it. And there's no modes in GTA. There's just the difficulty that the game sets you off with. The police don't get any easier. There's an argument to be made that they become more frequent and better armed with the wanted level, and that's probably some kind of difficulty alternator, but at the same time, it's basically the same difficulty the whole game, and the missions are designed to complement the story rather than enhance the gameplay. But you've got cheats. So much so that I remember being able to enter the cheats almost like telekinetically. I could type it in. It was like I was a computer hacker, just over and over and over and over again to get bullets and weapons and stuff. But I appreciated that because if no other reason than it allowed me the opportunity to complete the game. I got to experience the story from start to finish. Now, do I wish I could go back and play it without the cheats? Kind of. Because the more recent incarnations of GTA, GTA 4 did, but it locked achievements on your console if you did cheat, and GTA 5 has none. As far as I'm aware, at least, there's nothing expressly put in by the game designers that allows you to cheat. There's modifications and things like that, but offset, it's just you and the game. Red Dead Redemption 2 has cheats, but again, I would imagine it's a similar trade-off, which is they'll let you cheat, but that means you're going to get locked achievements. You can't claim that you've completed anything because really you haven't. And I like that. I like the fact that it's open to people if they want to choose that. And it's exactly the same with the easy mode. The other thing I wanted to point out is difficulty is a little bit subjective. Here's why. Think about you right now, sitting there listening to this. I would imagine you have talents, abilities, capabilities that others don't have. You could kick a ball further than anybody else. You could balance that ball better than that person could. You could do things manipulating that ball to perform certain tasks that other people couldn't or the next person couldn't. But it's the same activity. You're interacting with a ball. But there's different applications in doing that that would suit you better than the next person. Different games suit different people. I'm not the best racing game guy. I'm not the best first-person shooter guy. I'm an RPG fighting game guy. I love me some fighting games and I love me some RPGs, especially the ones where it's all stat-based and I can just grind out results over a period of time. I love that. Really do. I think, though, if you were to offer me the ability to be able to lower the difficulty level in a game, I'd take it 9 times out of 10. The SNES that I'm playing at the moment, for instance, the games on there that I'm thankful that there's a difficulty level on, they're all of them. And then there's the games that don't have any difficulties, and I gently weep at night thinking about playing them because they just cause me so much torment. But the thing with the easy mode debate is this. I think gaming has to be tailored to you. But you can't hold it against people if they want to tailor it to them. It's one of these things where it's live and let live. Your experience isn't going to govern who anyone else's gaming experience. Their gaming experience isn't going to govern yours. Purchasing habits, I understand. That is a genuine concern. And it's a concern I share, frankly. It's why you're seeing the advent of live services sort of invade gaming in a way that I'm not 100% comfortable with. Maybe I'm being overly paranoid. But the fact that... I'll take Anthem as an example. It's one that I'm seeing is being pilloried to a certain degree because it isn't the game that it promised to be. There's been articles and things of that nature that have come out since that detail the time frame, but I'm not going to get into that here. But effectively, BioWare are as culpable in this as EA are, maybe even more so because of the time frames they put into place. But I'm talking about the game. The game is a live service. And as a result, there's a built-in difficulty. There's a built-in level of progression. There's grinding that you have to endure. The game isn't necessarily fun. And that culture is being governed by the purchasing habits of gamers. Specifically Wales. I'm not saying that everyone buys this. I'm certainly not. And I know a lot of gamers who stick to other platforms and they buy games that are cheap and cheerful, or they buy second-hand or whatever. But the point is that that's being governed by a certain attitude of gamers. The easy mode isn't. The easy mode isn't... It isn't something that you can just disregard as being not part of gaming, because I think it goes against the culture of gaming in general, which is everyone gets to experience this. Everyone gets a seat at the table. That's why I love gaming so much, because it's kind of... Anyone can pick up a game and play it and have an experience. Not everyone can pick up a book and read it. Not everyone has the patience or the fortitude or the willingness to put down their phone for longer than 30 seconds. Some people can't even be asked to sit through a movie that's 2 hours long. And that's a medium that's been purposely designed to entertain you for 2 hours solid, potentially. Gaming these days isn't necessarily designed to do that. But it is a good time killer, and it's a great storyteller when it wants to be. And with the easy mode thing, it just seems to be like a really odd way to spend your energy, considering what we're seeing with live services and this movement that seems to be occurring with developers on the high end of the scale. I don't want to mesh everyone in this, but several high-profile releases of games that I would have loved probably 5 years ago. Fallout 76, I was so excited when I saw the fact there was a Fallout game coming out. Anthem, I love the concept of mech suits and being able to fly and stuff like that. But from what I've seen on the reviews, these games are falling woefully short because they're attempting to pander to a type of consumerism in gamers these days that I just don't follow. So, when it comes to the easy debate, you'll forgive me now, because if I can't move forward with gaming, and you'll pardon the pun here, I will have to retreat to the halcyon days of gaming when things were designed from a single-player perspective. They were designed to inspire you to go to school the next day and tell your friends all about your adventures in your games and share experiences and invite people around to co-op and to multiplayer and things like that. Things that were all-inclusive from the get-go. Easy mode included. So my point to this is not necessarily to disparage people that want to be hardcore. I say go for it, man. The only game I ever completed on the hardest difficulty was Gears of War 2, and that was in co-op as well. And I got a story out of it. I'm saying that your energy may be better expended looking at what your habits are, because your habits aren't necessarily benefiting the industry as a whole, which will lead to worse things down the line, because we've already seen examples of difficulty levels being locked by some developers. The one that springs immediately to mind is Metro Last Light, when I think it was Ranger difficulty was locked behind a paywall of some description. If it wasn't, it was a day one. It was part of a pack or an edition of the game. That's the thing to be more worried about. Live services encouraging developers to gate off more and more content to sell it back to you for the same price as what you would have paid for the whole package before. That concerns me. It prices me out of gaming in the future, and it means that I have to look to the past to satiate my lust for gaming goodness. And I don't want to do that. I want to experience new titles, and I want to see the new generation of storytelling and the new generation of graphics and abilities that it's possible to produce with these consoles. But nevertheless, you'll be happy to hear, for those of you among the gaming quarter of us, that brings this part of the what would we call this section to a close. Instead, let's now talk about and you have to forgive me, this is where I have to work out the kinks here, ladies and gentlemen. I will take a moment here to explain something, because unfortunately for some reason all day today I've been struggling to breathe. Now don't panic anybody if I wake up dead tomorrow. This isn't probably as a result of this, is probably due to my cocaine habit. My diaphragm for some reason it feels really tight. It feels like I'm pressing against, I feel like I constantly have to take a deep breath. Not even entirely sure why. I'm sure it's just one of those weird little things. I'll wake up tomorrow and it'll be fine. But if you've noticed me breathing quite heavily during this podcast, it's mainly because of that. So I apologize. It's not because I'm not aroused by you. And I am. Don't worry. I am superiorly aroused. Do you always wear that? It looks lovely on you. You smell great too. But it's just for those of you wondering why I'm breathing heavily, that's the main reason. Right, so let's move on. Let's talk about some sports, shall we? I want to touch on the BK5 thing, the Bareknuckle 5 event again. I don't want to talk about it some more, because I think I gave myself a bit of a disservice again yesterday, so I want to take a second run at this. The reason why I don't like BK5 and yet I like UFC, because it's an odd comparison to have to defend, for me, but for other people if I try to explain one over the other. Even comparing and contrasting UFC to boxing, it's hard sometimes. But then let's take it one step further. Let's compare and contrast Bareknuckle fighting with the UFC. So, for those of you not versed in what the UFC is, Ultimate Fighting Championship, founded in, I believe it was the early 90s. The idea being that you amalgamate all different fighting styles to try and produce an event that showcases everything. This morphed over time to a unique style of fighting, which is now called mixed martial arts. The UFC is the most predominant brand. I think it's fair to say that they're unrivaled. Bellator are probably their closest rivals in America, although in, I think it's Asia, in places like Japan, and I'm pretty sure it's Japan and China. I could be wrong. It could be Japan and Thailand, but I'm 100% certain. You've got organizations like One, you've got Rising, you've got a few, I think it's the Ultimate Fighting League or something along those lines, WEC I think even. They may have been amalgamated into the UFC, because UFC went through a period of buying up everybody. But that's besides the point. The UFC is now the Premier League, the NFL of mixed martial arts. This comes with some drawbacks though. While that they can bang the drum and say that they're the biggest, and without a doubt they're the biggest. They're huge, massive. There are people that have become disenfranchised with the way that it's run, not necessarily the fighting. I actually really enjoy UFC events. There's not a bad fight on most of the cards. I do become tired of the politics of UFC though, because more and more they're leaning towards WWE, basically. They've got their supposed corrupt leader, Dana White, who only looks after the company and himself and his chosen few. You've got the corporate champion, Conor McGregor, who does whatever the damn well he pleases and gets away with everything, even though he's an evil little shit. And then you've got Khabib, who is the supposed stone cold character. You know, has some kind of moral compass, albeit in the real life, Khabib is probably not the person I would hold up as the, you know, the Mother Teresa of the UFC world. And then it filters down from there. You've got characters and you've got people going back and forth. But what remains, though, is the fighting. The fighting is still pure. It's better than ever. It's more technical than ever. It's more well-rounded and honed. It's also just as diverse as it once was. You still have power punches. You still have grapplers. You still have people that are proficient in jiu-jitsu, in wrestling, Thai boxing, Muay Thai, kickboxing, which are variants. I know they all sound the same, but they're not. There are slight variants. Karate, Taibo, Taekwondo, Judo. All these things are amalgamated in using techniques rather than outright styles. And then you get Bareknuckle Boxing. Or Bareknuckle. This is the weird thing. I don't know if it's just boxing. I'm pretty sure it is. But it's not. I don't know if it's an MMA bout. I'm going to have to research that more. But to the crux of the issue here. Why don't I like it? Well, the UFC, and Luke Thomas actually made this point, and I'm in complete agreement with him. The UFC fighters have to train to extraordinary lengths. They have to hone every single skill in order to get to a point where they can inflict damage. And if you are going to attempt to inflict damage on other people, it will exert a cost on you, because they will have the exact same inclination. You might have to choke down a few punches if you want to try and land or worse, a knee to the face if you want to try and land a takedown. If you want to attempt to control an opponent on the ground, you better be prepared for some punches to the gut and some elbows and things of that nature. In Bareknuckle, it's just not a very nuanced form of fighting. It really isn't. The event that I've seen now, and I've seen highlights and the event itself of Artem Lobov's debut in this. And for people that don't know, Artem Lobov is a close affiliate of Conor McGregor, which is how he's famous. He's also famous for being one of, perhaps, on paper and in record, the worst UFC fighter currently active. If he's not on the UFC roster anymore, no longer, but at one point he was heralded as perhaps the person with the worst record. Like, just not a world-renowned fighter. Famous, but not world-renowned. And he's taking the plunge of going into bare knuckle. And I don't like it. There is an inherent violence to mixed martial arts. I'm not going to kid myself there. Boxing as well. People have this weird fixation that boxing isn't as dangerous as it really is. The reason I give bare knuckle boxing credit, actually, is because they remove the gloves, meaning it's harder to hit somebody. And for those of you not well versed in fighting, if you punch someone in the face, chances are you're going to break your hand. Hands aren't really designed to deliver blows to the head. They're good for clawing, scratching, climbing, all the rest of that sort of stuff. In terms of an impact on a solid object like a skull, especially if you crack someone on the brow, on the ridge of your head, yeah, you're going to break your goddamn hand pretty goddamn quickly. So taking away the gloves actually makes it safer from a concussive standpoint, because you're not going to be punching someone in the head all that much because of the risk of breaking your hand. You're going to want to jab, you're going to want to flick, and if you are going to punch, you're going to want to lean in with hooks. Things that you can use to contort your body and create more torque in order to get more punching power per swing than you would do just throttling someone, with a bad straight or a cross. But in this particular instance, it just looks ugly. It looks undignified. It looks unruly. It looks uncivilized and rabid. It's about as close an approximation as I can think of as to what people thought UFC was when it first came on the scene, which is human cockfighting. There's no... I think most MMA fighters would agree that there's something to having a warrior spirit in the octagon, which is to compete with honor and to compete to the greatest of your abilities. Not to ever really fight out of desperation, albeit I understand fighters will sometimes resort to desperation tactics. But this just seems like a step too far. Like, even the fact that they call it bare knuckle, but then they've got wraps on. They've got wraps on their wrists. Now, while you still might break a knuckle, or a finger, or even a... I forget, it's not a metatarsal. I think it's a I forget. I know metatarsals are feet, and it's meta something in your hands. I forget. The bones that run along the ridge of your palm to connect your wrist to your fingers. It's quite easy to break those as well. But if you're not going to sprain your wrist, and you're not going to twist your wrist by punching someone because they're strapped up, it's still going to help you do more damage. So it's not really... You're kind of still missing the point there. The point is no wraps, no gloves at all. And even though that looks bad, I will grant you that. It's actually safer for people. My problem with it, though, is that that particular fight was just too violent. Far too violent. And it served no purpose. Both fighters looked like hell afterwards. And it was a decision. It wasn't like anyone got knocked out. Which, again, I suppose is maybe the point. But I reaffirm my stance, which is that UFC is probably the premier combat sport entertainment company in the world right now. WWE may come back in years to come. Right now, though, their product is aimed more towards kids. NXT does what it can, but I can't... It's something about the size of it that puts me off. And that's such a tacky and small-minded thing to think, but it does. And I can't deny that it doesn't. The takeover events I can get on board with. New Japan I can't get on board with, unfortunately, because it's just a different culture. It just feels different. It doesn't feel the same. It felt the same as when I watched the Floyd Mayweather bout in Ryzen. It just didn't feel like a big fight feel. It felt almost like an after event, like a fight being held at a community centre for some reason. It's tricky to get invested when that sort of thing happens. But yeah, with bare knuckle, I don't know. You're gonna have to watch it for yourselves and let me know what you think. It's just not my jam, and I will wholeheartedly consider recommending UFC over bare knuckle, considering that the upcoming event on Sunday the 14th of April features, let's have a very quick look. So Max Holloway takes on Dustin Poirier. Max Holloway is someone that I've not followed all that closely, but I see that he's an incredibly talented fighter recently. If you don't watch it, the MMA, I think it's the MMA Hour that Luke Thomas hosts along with his radio show, broke down the comparisons between him and Marvin Hagler, the boxer from the 1970s and 80s. 80s, I think, more prominently. Kelvin Gastelum versus Israel Adesanya. For those of you not familiar with Israel Adesanya, aka Stylebender, is supposed to be the next big prodigy in UFC. Undefeated at 16-0. A really, really talented striker. Very exciting looking dude. Does a lot of Mortal Kombat poses and Stone Cold stunned someone not too long ago. Yeah, you got some good fights there. I want to just finish off the sporting section. I was hoping to try and get around to some other sporting bits. Just to touch on those very quickly. It's this week's Raw, which I did watch. I'm not going to get around to talking about an Arsenal's results. Everton 1-0. We're not going to talk about that. But I do just want to finish on UFC very quickly because I mentioned it again in the last podcast, the whole Conor Khabib situation. That threatens to maybe fall by the wayside because the more interesting events that are occurring in the UFC right now is the John Jones, Daniel Cormier, Stipe Miocic, Brock Lesnar situation at heavyweight. Even Cain Velasquez and Francis Ngannou could be thrown into that mix as well. There's just so much going on at heavyweight right now. And heavyweight is a division that's historically been either hotter than hot or completely dead. And that can be said in boxing as well. Right now it's actually hotter than maybe it's been in the last 20, 25 years. And I would argue even during Lennox Lewis's reign, hotter than that because Lennox Lewis was just so dominant. But then you got AJ in there, you got Fury in there, you got Wilder in there, you've got a few other names that are still. Joseph Parker's still a force. I don't care what anyone else says. He's still a force. Dillian White, still a force and out there somewhere. But the UFC, the Conor Khabib thing is just becoming a bit of a sideshow now because neither one of them can fight. Conor can't fight for another 3 months, I think. Because they fought in December and he was given a 6-month suspension. Khabib can't fight for 12, which means he's not fighting until December, and that's even if he starts a training camp between now and then, and that's highly unlikely. So, the fact that these two are still swinging handbags at each other when you've got a much more exciting prospect at heavyweight, just for future reference, and so no one worries about whether or not I'm going to keep talking about it, I think I'm going to put my focus and my efforts there, rather than with Conor and Khabib, because I'd much rather talk about the actual fighting than the societal differences between the two of them and who's right and who's wrong in that stupid-ass conversation. But that, for the sports fans, I'm sad to say, is the end of the sports section of this podcast. So let's move it over to the social media side of things. And I've got to be frank, it's been a quiet day on the social media side for me. Usually I'm quite invested in social media, despite my protestations and my harkening about the dangers of social media and think for yourselves and don't be sheep. But considering the weekend of WWE, for instance, has spread the joy of goodwill to the wrestling fans of the world, it seems to have filtered through to the rest of social media. I can't see an awful lot of outrage or anything like that, which is a refreshing change of pace, it has to be said. I like the idea that we can go maybe a couple of days without being recreationally aggrieved by absolutely everything we see. I get the idea that some stage we're just going to open our front door, take the picture of the first thing that we come into contact with, tweet it, and say, what is the world coming to now with this bullshit? I will, alluding to a conversation that I had recently, got into the finer discussion of what is art with an individual who will remain nameless. It got me thinking, actually, about social media and the tricky... The folly of attempting to engage with people sometimes is hard. Because even person to person, it's tricky. I'll give you an example. Because I spend 8 hours a day working, as is most people, my interaction is typically with my work colleagues. Not so much with customers. I get some interaction with customers, albeit on a very infrequent basis, and that's through choice. I just personally prefer being able to moderate my day and, you know, be able to interact with people at my leisure rather than as a part of my job, so to speak. So I get to have conversations with people, and I have, for the most part, some pretty interesting folks that I converse with on a regular basis. But it's still hard. I see these people day in and day out. I see them for 8 hours a day, sometimes more. I see them more than their loved ones. I see them more than their best friends do. But I still don't know jack shit about most of these people. And it shows when you go down to the lunchroom. Because in the lunchroom, damn, it's hard. It's hard to interact with people, especially for me. As you may have noticed by now, I love me some talking. I do like to talk. I enjoy talking to you. Are you still okay there? You good? You comfy? Can I get you a cup of tea? Maybe you'd like a sponge bath. I like talking. It's my way of trying to connect with people because I feel like in opening as many doors as I can in conversation that it allows people to jump in and I get to listen. The trouble is that people take that ball and run with it, which is they just let me carry on talking, which is hard. Whenever I listen to these podcasts back, I like the idea of someone being able to jump in and just take the ball and run with it themselves. Just to touch on it again, Defunct Games, my podcast with him, my big regret with there is that I didn't ask him enough questions. I really wish I'd have just shut up and let him talk a little bit more. GFY Productions as well, another classic case where I just wish I'd maybe run through things with him before we got started so that he, bless him, he had an opportunity to really talk his mind. And I felt like I took over the conversation at times when I shouldn't have done. But that happens in all my everyday life as well. I often have to take over the conversation because people think, oh, well, Lorne's now leading. And I don't like leading, I like listening. But it's hard because I struggle to interact with people at the best of times. Especially, like I said, in the lunchroom where people are a little bit more relaxed and a bit more prone to acting like themselves rather than their professional incarnation, if you will. I get pulled up for talking a lot of shit or for just going off. But at the same time, these same motherfuckers find me funny a lot of the time. A lot of the time, they'll just kind of palm it off, but then they'll realise, actually, no, this guy's pretty funny. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm just trying to speak my mind. So you can see the disparity there. These are people I know. These are people that know me, and yet the interactions can be wildly different. Take that to social media. Jesus Christ. Now you've got people that are attempting not only to propel and project an image of themselves that perhaps isn't true, perhaps is an over-embellished version of themselves, or that is overly reliant on the behaviour and desires of other people. But then there's the lack of responsibility, the lack of ability to be able to hold people accountable for the things they say or the inconsistencies in their speech. There's a lot of times on Twitter where you'll try and have a conversation with someone, and I mean a legitimate conversation, and it just devolves very quickly into a personal attack on someone else, because we can't have nice things. My discussion on art is a prime example. I will admit, I got pretty heated in that conversation. There were times where I was being spoken over, and I was fully ready to say, hey, you let me finish my point, and you're going to be sorry if you don't. But then you realise, look, sometimes conversations don't flow naturally. They don't ebb and flow the way you would like them to. That's part of the reason why you need to learn to communicate. You need to learn to listen before you can talk. And on social media, that effect is compounded because I think people feel like they have no responsibility to listen at all. Like none. The fact that they've been willing to give you their attention and their words and their sentiments is reward enough. To then have to listen to what your retort is like a personal insult. It's like you're actually inciting them at that point. And that's tricky, because social media, the entire fabric of what social media was supposed to be built on when it was first concocted wasn't just sharing cat pictures and penises. It was to try and bridge the gaps between the people that struggled to communicate, to try and find common ground with people more than they were finding in their social lives. I mean, I speak for one. I spent endless hours on MSN Messenger attempting to make connections with people and failing miserably, because unfortunately these were the same people I'd go to school with, who I didn't have a connection with to begin with. But then social media comes along and suddenly it promises that you can meet people who are like-minded and people that will be accepting to your views and will open the door to other views. And I can honestly say that YouTube, though, not Twitter, has been more of a way of doing this than social media, Facebook and Twitter is. Because on YouTube, there's collaboration, there's back and forth, there's support, there's genuine criticism, not harsh words. So here's the advice I would have for people that have attempted, and I don't know how many of you there are that try to do this, but have attempted to make a tangible connection with people online. I would say do the YouTube thing. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. It comes with its own set of problems. looking at your stats becomes maddening after a while. There are content creators that won't look at the views, they will look at the likes. There are content creators that will only look at the subs. There are content creators that will look at the algorithms and the analytics and stuff. And it can drive you mental trying to pander to this never-ending train of did they like it, why didn't they like it, why did they like it, when are they going to watch it, how much are they going to watch, and what are they going to watch. But my advice to you is to try not to get wound up by that. Try and treat YouTube, at least initially, if you can find a voice and a verve and a way to be successful, hey, fucking great! Now you've found another avenue in life that you can explore the success of. Great, good for you. But if you're just using social media as a means to actually connect with people, to attempt to get your voice out there, to try and get over your personality with people, YouTube is a great way of doing that. And I can speak for that personally. I've met some really cool people on YouTube just by interacting with them, watching their shows, them watching mine, and chatting back and forth. The reason I don't promote their channels anymore is quite simple. I don't want to patronize them by insinuating that I can pass on some part of my success to them, because all of the channels that I used to promote are now doing great. Doing as good as me, if not better. And I've given props for that, because it means that they pursued their passion to the extent of their ability. And they still do it for the love of the game. And there's nothing better than that, because it means that while you're loving it, doing what you're doing, you're also meeting people and having fun doing it. And I can honestly say it's one of the better things that I get to do in a day, to sit down and decide what I'm going to be talking about on a show or writing a joke or whatever, because I get satisfaction knowing that at some stage, some way, somehow, one of my buddies might see it and say, ha, dude, that was actually pretty funny. That was actually really cool. And even if I have to sit back and watch it, sometimes I cringe, sometimes I'm really happy with the end product, it's still nice to be able to interact that way, because it feels meaningful. It feels like an actual piece of myself, rather than some clever, witty words on a screen or some fucking gif that I found from somewhere that someone else made. It feels like a part of me. And I would hope that there are those of you out there that maybe aren't emboldened enough to do it, because they're worried about the reaction or the lack of a reaction. You know, there's a saying that, a lot of people's worst fear isn't being seen, it's not being noticed at all. I understand that, but I think you need to put yourself out there in these situations before you can be noticed in the first place. And that's even if you want to be noticed. Some people need to be careful what they want to be noticed for. And for me on YouTube, it's just producing content that I can look back on and say I had a laugh doing it. But yeah, it's kind of a roundabout way of saying it. I apologize for taking so long to say it. It's hard. It's not easy trying to sum things up on social media, especially when you don't, like, just to give you a clue for this show, this new rendition of the podcast. I decided that I was going to pinch some ideas off, because I'm not very good at accepting criticism. Even more so when I think I'm doing a good thing anyway. But I think one of the things that is a fair criticism of my channel is that you never quite know what you're going to get. You never really know what you're about to watch. And with the podcast, though, I've always liked the fact that I could talk about anything that tickled my fancy. But the problem with that, though, is as well that it's a long format and people don't have time. And so I figured by splitting up the podcast into several pieces that it would afford me the opportunity to be able to not only get my points across so that people actually hear them, but it means I don't have to compromise on the format as far as recording is concerned. And to touch on making YouTube videos again, it's not easy. Some people make it look easier than it really is, but the editing process is quite laborious, and the recording process isn't the most fun when you do it on your own. It's much more fun when you have compatriots and compadres to do it with you, which is why I constantly, and indeed on this episode right now, I extend invitations to anyone that wants to come and do a podcast with me, because it's fun. I enjoy having the conversation. I also like hearing what other people think about things. I also have fun talking to people. And I think it's interesting getting their perspectives on things. Even if they're on subjects that they don't know anything about, it's nice to be able to answer questions and hear what their thoughts are to the responses. But it's better if I get to ask them questions. I'd like to be able to quiz more people, but it's finding people that have the time and the inclination to do it. So I'm going to bring this section of the podcast to a close a little bit abruptly. Apologies if people were looking for a little bit more social media talk, but unfortunately, like I say, it's just not that kind of day today where there's a lot going off or anyone calling me an asshole on Twitter. It's a rare day indeed. So on that note, let's move on to the final part of the podcast, which is where I'm going to give some love. I might not promote these channels anymore, but I certainly Don't want to forget where I came from in terms of the people around me who are producing content that I really enjoy and that I try to share and I try to get the word out about as much as I can. So I want to talk about some channels. You'll probably know these channels very well because you're probably the gits listening to this, you sexy bastards. So let's talk about a couple of channels that I want to just very quickly touch on and say, look, go and watch their shit, man. Go and watch it right now. Stop listening to this. Skip the next 15 minutes where you're going to have to listen to this particular part to be able to get the information, to be able to go and watch the videos, but that's not the point here nor there. Don't correct me. Do as I say, not as I do. This is why your mother cries. Let's start with Bash Brothers. Bash Brothers movie reviews. These guys are Croatian kick-assery motherfuckers. I love these guys to death. Such a damn shame we still haven't got a podcast together. I really wish we could do a podcast talking about movies because these guys know their shit when it comes to movies. They watch a ton of movies, they review a ton of movies, they're really into the Oscar season. I really regret that I didn't watch their shit when it came out first. I always find myself catching stuff after the fact. Classic case in point, I'm on their channel right now and I'm looking at it, and the last review was 2 months ago. I remember watching the review, but I don't remember watching it straight away. So, dudes, I apologize profusely. But, two brothers, they do reviews to camera on a set that they've designed, and they'll often review the movies of the time. They're going to be, and I've had a discussion with them on my channel comment section. They're going to be reviewing all the big movies coming out soon. They've got Shazam in the works. They've got Avengers Endgame in the works. I know that they've been watching a whole bunch of other movies, so I suspect they'll be doing reviews on those coming forward. They're just really cool dudes. Really nice guys who sit and chat and have banter between the two of them. Their chemistry is great. Yes, they've got a thick Croatian accent, but they speak English perfectly fine, so there's no excuses for you not to go and watch them. Some of their more recent reviews, let's touch on. Got Aquaman, which I haven't gotten around to seeing yet. Glass, which I haven't seen, but I understand what happens because I was nosy and curious. Creed 2, come on Creed, come on Creed. That came out, that's being, anyone that's on YouTube right now knows that that film is being beaten to death in the adverts 2 or 3 times. If you listen to music on YouTube like I do occasionally, they've gone into full-on 2 ad overload, and I don't know why. If they put these bastards in the ads, I'd watch all the ads, but unfortunately I don't. I have to watch the advertisement for the thing that they're talking about. Pain in the ass. You got Hunter Killer, you got Venom, you got the Meg movie, Robin Hood, and Christopher Robin, the Winnie the Pooh movie, First Man, Girl in the Spider's Web, Bohemian Rhapsody, and Ant-Man and the Wasp. Those are the most recent reviews, going back the last 6 months. So I'd consider it a personal favour to me if you wouldn't terribly go and watch that channel. It's a sexy channel, and I think you'll agree. Let's go to the next one. I call him Crow for short, because 2 reasons. Number one, that's his logo, and secondly, I always butcher his name whenever I attempt to say it. Cronenborg73 Making Gaming Fun, the channel. Up to 112 subscribers. You get in there, you sexy git. Bash Brothers, 38. Come on, guys. Come on now. 38. They need more subs than that. You go and sub to their goddamn channel right now. You get that 50 at least right now. I want to see that at 50 within the week. But coming back to Cronenborg73. A Let's Player, a gamer through and through. This guy lives and breathes gaming and produces a truckload of content considering the time that the poor bastard has at his disposal. But is just a real gamer. Just a guy that sits down and says, look, check me out gaming for a little while. And I really enjoy his stuff. He's got a very candid nature, very subdued nature. He's not the kind of guy that just loses his shit every 5 minutes and goes, oh my god, isn't this the craziest thing in the world? Oh my god. And he plays a lot of games that you're probably not going to be playing. So that you can at least get some exposure to some games that you might not otherwise have encountered. I think, though, what's best about him is that he doesn't cut out any stuff. He leaves it all in. He just goes. It's like watching a real gaming experience for someone that hasn't played the game. And I think there's something wholesome and really good about that, because I think there's always the temptation as content creators to make us look way cooler than we are, way better than we are, way more intelligent and good and sexy with our long penises and things of that nature. But this guy just leaves it all in there and says, look, this is the experience I had. Here's what I think, here's what I think you should think. Some of the more recent videos, he's got the Stalin Subway, Red Veil. He's got Euro Truck Simulator, the part 8 of his Let's Play. He's got Let's Play with Sherlock Holmes and the Silver Earring. Although I think, is earring spelled with 2 R's? I may have just doubted you there, Crow. I want to double check that. If not, I owe you an apology and a beer for misspelling earring all these years. You've got Operation Matriarchy. You've got Battlefield 4. You've got Postmortem, Siberia, Past Cure. So you've got not even the same type of game twice in the last 8 videos. So if you want a good exposure to a bunch of different games across a bunch of different genres, then Chronoborg is the guy you need to go see. So please go and give him a check out. Moving on. GFY, Craig, my boy. Good, close, personal friend. Purely platonic, I assure you. This is a guy that just talks whatever. He's more... I want to say he's more in line with me, but he's a crazy. He just talks about whatever tickles his fancy. And I mean whatever tickles his fancy. At least I try to moderate what I talk about to try and at least sound sane, despite the fact that my sanity checked its coat at the door a long time ago. This guy just makes whatever comes to his mind. And I've got to be honest with you, it doesn't always hit with me. But I love the fact that this guy makes that stuff the way he does. He just goes crazy. The best example I can give you is his more recent video, YouTube Sucks Sometimes. And he just lets YouTube have it. It's great. I really enjoyed watching it. It's a very short video, only 2.5 minutes, so anyone's got time to watch it. But he just lets them have it. He just says, hey, YouTube, you suck, man. You're picking on smaller channels. What about the creators that just want to get into it for the love of the game? You're holding off content and avenues of content for those of us that want to be able to do live streams off of our iPads and our iPhones and things of that nature, but we don't quote-unquote qualify because listen, bitch, Facebook lets us do that. Twitter lets us do that. Why aren't you letting us do that? I love that. I love the veracity of his argument there, because I can't really argue with it. And he didn't use any fancy words, and he didn't use any examples like guys fucking sometimes do. He just let you know straight up, this is bullshit. Sort it out. Because there's creators that want to be able to create on their own volition, not just to try and get a paycheck. And we should be allowed the same tools and access as you. But let's go through some more of his videos, because I want to give him some full exposure. He's got a short rant about Batman. Guy loves music, by the way. Talks about music a lot, listens to music a lot, and I love when he does his music talks, because he's got a real chilled vibe to him. Really likes listening to his music, and it's nice watching him listen to his music and describe how he's feeling and what the song is and what it means to him, and a bit of background of the band and the song itself. It's cool. It's a chilled vibe, and I love it when he does live streams as well. I hope he does more live streams. GFY, if you're listening, do more live streams. I've got to watch him live, brother. So, GFY, what a guy. Lovely, lovely, lovely fella. Finally, the one you probably heard me banging on about the most. He's been referenced a million times in this review. See, I get so caught up in saying review these days because I've just been writing reviews constantly in top fives and all the rest of this shit. Podcasts have taken a bit of a back step, even so that I don't call them podcasts anymore. Defunct Games. Cyril Lachelle. Captain of all that I say along. I don't really know what else to say at this point. I've plugged his channel a bunch of times on my channel. For what reason, I don't know, considering that his channel dwarfs mine several times over. And in fact, he's actually a big shout. Anyone that's listening to this podcast right now who's subscribed as a result of his channel, I want to personally say thank you. I also want to personally apologize in advance for the lack of quality of content you're about to experience. Overall, in terms of the production value and indeed the research, because you're used to Cyril, and Cyril is perhaps one of the more learned individuals when it comes to content on the planet that I've ever met in terms of movies, music, gaming, you name it. The guy probably knows something about it, which makes him infuriatingly hard to debate against, but not impossible if you bring a degree of ignorance like I bring in spades. I've been on his channel a few times now. In fact, the videos as they sit right now, there are 4 of them. I appear in at least one of them, which is why you should go watch that one in particular. It may also be why it's rated the lowest, but there you go. What are you going to do? You buy lawn, you get lawn, I guess. He focuses more on a lot of gaming-related topics that range from the informative to the intriguing. The Game Awards that I was a member of, the Electronic Gaming Monthly Awards, was this fictitious gaming award ceremony that he would present that was based on the awards of the same name from the magazine that was presented years earlier, except for he gave it life, he gave it a face. And then you've got the game over episodes, which literally details how games are over in terms of how the game progresses in terms of its story and how it finishes, and shows you in his more recent episode, Earthworm Jim, which I actually played back in the day. I actually remember this game. It was on the PC though. It wasn't Sega or anything like that. It was on a PC version that I played. I remember the ending. It was a trip watching it and sort of seeing something that I hadn't seen in the better part of 20 years. Nearly 25 years, as a matter of fact. A long time ago. So the fact that you get to go back, it's kind of like what I envisaged Halcyon to begin with. This is why it's a trip. Working with him and interacting with him is that he's got it. He understands the kind of content that I think more people on YouTube should not only be doing, but appreciating at the very least. He's a careful, considered individual who makes content of the highest quality. He's seeking out topics that no one else is talking about, but giving it life and giving it relevance. And more to the point, he's spreading the love. He's one of the most positive people that I've ever met, and one of the most generous people with his time, and indeed one of the more balanced and indeed easier people to approach when it comes to gaming. He gave me some great advice over the course of the years. I continue to give him bad advice, and I continue trying to sabotage myself despite his insistence on not doing it. I'm trying not to sabotage myself going forward. One of the ideas that led to that is leading to this podcast, so I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you to him again, but also to say to anyone listening to this podcast who's not currently subscribed to Defunct Games to get your motherfucking asses over there and subscribe right now. His channel is unreal. You will not regret it. So, with that note, now that we've covered all the love and we've covered all the sport and we've covered all the gaming and we've covered all the social media, it's time to wrap up this edition of the Halcyon show to a close. So I want to take a second to say thank you very much for listening. I want to say thank you for watching any of my previous content. If you've checked out some of my other videos recently, again, any new subscribers, I want to say thank you. I want to say really appreciate you taking the time to subscribe and leave comments and things of that nature. I will warn you, I'm rubbish at replying to comments. I'm trying to get better. The trouble is, I work hard, I come in, I sit down, I want to make some content, but I do want to, and that takes a lot out of me, so I do want to get back to comments. So literally as I finish recording this and set the video to render, I'm going to be going through the comments and I'm going to be replying to people. Let's just take a very quick second actually to see if we can't find out, because the problem that you won't know if you're not a YouTuber is that the beta studio, if you want to call it that, why they call it that I don't know. Such a dumb name. It limits some of the functionality. So going back to the original version of the studio, the original dashboard allows you, it's just, I prefer it. It's just so much easier. You see immediately watch time, views, subscribers, estimated value, subscribers, views, all the more recent videos. It also allows you to click community, and it also allows you to click on subscribers. So I can see who's been, and I don't check this very often, so let's have a look. Some of my more recent subscribers. So look, so we've got King Harkinian. I don't remember him. Philia loves Squiggly. Philia I've had some interactions with on Defunct Gaming's channel. Sean P. I've had some interactions with on some of my videos recently. He's taken the time to watch some, I think, my top 5 list recently on gaming. First person shooters to make you feel like a badass. Actually, really good discussion with him. This guy sounds like he knows a lot of his shit, so it's going to be interesting talking to him, getting some perspective on that. Cyberpunk Nut, again, another Defunct Gaming cohort. I'm going to include him on this because I see him in damn near all the comment sections, and I've interacted with this guy a lot, and again, seems to really know his shit. I'm starting to feel overwhelmed by the knowledge on display by these guys, but I'm going to do my best by playing a SNES that's 30 years out of date to try and catch up with the knowledge. I think that'll work. I think that's a similar level of experience there. I've also got a new one here by the name of My RSVP Videos. I hope that's not a bot, but you never know. But to all those people, I want to say thank you very much for subscribing. I hope that you're staying tuned. I hope that you'll like, share, subscribe. Check out some of the other content that I've produced recently. As opposed to normal, I'm going to say go and check out some of the other content creators that I've included in the description below. They deserve your love and appreciation. And in the meantime, as always, please take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys in the next episode of The Halcyon Show.